manage stress. We'll cover what stress is, how it affects us mentally and physically, and how we can manage it from three perspectives, eternally, physically, and socially. So I'm sure we all have a working understanding of what stress is because we claim to experience it on a daily basis. So I'm going to give you the scientific definition for stress. Stressors are events or pressures that places demands on an individual or threatens their well-being. Some stressors are upcoming finals. Chronic stressors are consistent or repeated stressors, such as school. School has consistent testing, assignments, and deadlines, so it can be considered a chronic stressor. But other chronic stressors are something from your environment, such as growing up in poverty or crime. Stress is the response to physiological response to internal or external stressors. So if you can go ahead and Google the college stress test, you'll be able to complete this quick survey, and it'll give you a score on your life stressor for the past year. So was everyone able to access it?
Mm-hmm.
The McGraw-Hill one?
Yes. So once you get done with it, let me know what your score is, or let the cops know. Should be fairly quick. I forgot to mention that internal stressors are more self-evaluative compared to the external stressors I just mentioned. Internal stressors are something you put on yourself, such as your worries about your self-image or your self-esteem. So you guys score? You want to tell us your score?
1244.
My score was 953.
What's the range?
182 to 2571.
And the average score is 1247.
You got 1248.
Got 129.
You are chill.
Yeah.
You got
So-
below the lowest score. How was that
I
possible?
don't know.
Apparently there are some measurement issues. Our next question. These are the points that were assigned to those questions that you just admitted to. So what do you think about this scale? You think it's valid? Do you agree or disagree with any of these point systems? And what would you change? So,
I think for us it's a little different. Was that a question?
yes.
Okay. I think for us it's a little different with different classes and stuff, because I feel like classes in grad school there's different stressors other than the class. Like it didn't ask about like writing a thesis, defending a thesis, like that kind of thing. Yeah, worrying about, they said something about, there was only one financial question. I feel like that causes a lot more stress. But they had a
Good
lot of
response.
relationship questions.
I'm just floored by the fact that death of a close family member is so close to finals week in terms of the rating, because I just see those as like so very different. Like there's not a whole lot of variability in the upper end, I guess, of what's really, really stressful.
Yeah, And if you think about it, like 96 and 54 commuting to campus or work. Like, really? Commuting? I guess if you deal with
Finding
traffic,
parking,
Yeah.
finding parking,
this is
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
that should be a separate one. Finding parking.
Hmm.
Going on a first date, 57, kind of weird. I don't know. Depends on the person. What if it's the person you've been crushing on for like a year? I think that's like prolonged stress to
Mhm.
the commute. So this is a scale it's based on. I don't know if it's all that great, but it's one way that stress is assessed. So now that we've covered that, we'll move on to how our body responds to stress. Our immediate response to stress is called the fight or flight response. It's basically preparing us for emergency response to the situation. What happens is our hypothalamus stimulates our pituitary gland, which produces adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH, into the bloodstream. This eventually gets to your adrenal gland, which is right here. It sits on top of your kidney, and that produces cortisols and catecholamines. Cortisols basically increase the levels of glucose in your bloodstream. Glucose is the basic energy unit for your body, and catecholamines such as epinephrine and norepinephrine increases your sympathetic nervous system response, basically increases your breathing rate, your blood pressure, and all this prepares you to do something about the immediate threat in front of you. If that threat continues to be present, you enter this symptom called the general adaptation syndrome. It's considered a non-specific response, that is, it doesn't change from this progression depending on what the stressor is. It follows 3 stages. The first stage is the alarm phase that we just talked about, your fight or flight response. If the stressor continues, you enter a resistance phase, which is the second part. You have an increased resistance to the stressor, but this is at the cost of reducing your non-essential activities, such as digestion, growth, sex drive, and menstruation. If the stressor continues to be present, you eventually fall into the exhaustion phase. On this side, your stress resistance decreases lower than what it was before the stressor was present. Also, because of the side effects of the resistance phase, you start to have increased susceptibility to infection, tumors, you age faster, your organs can get damaged, and eventually you can die. And this is based on studies of introducing animals to prolonged stress. At a different level of stressor, a level of chronic stressor at a lower level, can weaken our immune systems, we can heal slower, we become more prone to getting sick, and just like the survey you just completed, getting sick is a stressor, so if you get sick, you have increased stress, which leads to a downward spiral. The second effect is burnout, which you might have experienced. It's characterized by mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion due to a prolonged exposure to an emotional draining situation, and it's coupled with decreased motivation and performance. So now that we've talked about all these stressors and what it does to us, we can move on to how we can manage that stress. One of the first method is with internal strategies. Stress gets amplified in your mind, so a significant part of stress management is controlling your mind. So to discuss these strategies, I'll present a physical example or a more concrete example. Just imagine that you have a big public speaking presentation at the end of the semester. So a repressive coping is to basically avoid anything that reminds you, avoid the situation or stimulus that reminds you of the event. So this is useful for the short term of just not worrying about the stressful event, but it can lead to a preoccupation with avoiding situations that remind you, such as going to the class that presentation is due in, or avoiding friends that are talking about it, or looking at your syllabus as it describes what the presentation entails. An alternative strategy is rational coping, which involves 3 stages, and with the goal to face and overcome that stressor. So the first step is acceptance. You come to realize that the stressor is present and you cannot wish it away. So you realize that your presentation is something you have to do, it's a requirement of the class, and you accept it. The second step is exposure. This involves seeking out or thinking about or attending to the stressor. So for exposure, you would finally look at your syllabus, see what the directions and guidelines are for the presentation, and maybe even ask your classmates about how they're going to do their presentations. And the last stage is understanding. This is seeking meaning for the stressor in your life. So you come to realize that although a public presentation is stressful, it is helpful for your future career and endeavors. Another strategy is reframing, which involves thinking of creative or new ways to view the stressor. And a style of this is the stress inoculation training, basically teaching you strategies that help you to deal with the stressor, such as rephrasing how stressor is to you. Like for anger management, you want to think about that person is not doing something intentional to get you mad. Or like in our previous lectures on the fundamental attribution error, to think about that whatever the action are doesn't really reflect their personality, it could be contextual. And so there are other forms. Physical strategies for stress management involves managing the body. Relaxation therapy is to reduce tension through conscious relaxation of your muscles. And it induces a relaxation response. It's basically characterized by lower levels of cortical activity, blood rate, breathing rate. So some examples of that is yoga, hypnosis, meditation, and even prayer. Similarly, biofeedback is trying to do the same thing, but with technology. So you have some devices that you're hooked up to that presents your brain waves or your blood pressure, and you consciously try to change that at will. Basically doing the same thing. If you watch some of the Hulk movies, Bruce Banner has a watch that he wears in one of the movies that shows his blood pressure, but he tries to control it to not change it to the Hulk. Lastly, aerobic exercise can help you. It's been correlated with higher psychological well-being, and it's been experimentally manipulated to show that it promotes health and happiness. So it reduces stress and promotes health and happiness. So after you've tried internal and physical strategies to manage your stress, you can try to change your situation, such as seeking out social support. Social support can help keep you motivated to face your stressor or engage in exercise more. They can help you with communication. You can talk to other people about what's stressing you out. Maybe they can help you reframe the stressor. And lastly, sharing with other people. They can help reduce your workload. Also, if they're like your classmate, at least they can suffer through your final exams with you. And if you've heard of laughter is the best medicine, there is some scientific support for that. Humor has been correlated. Correlated with increased pain tolerance and increased recovery from intense arousal. So for our discussion, I want you to talk about what is your perspective on medical alternatives to stress relief, such as with anti-anxiety medications. So are you supportive of it, neutral, or against medical alternatives to these stress management? So discuss among yourselves. Do you feel like it should be freely available, like over the counter?
Oh, no. I think it shouldn't be as difficult to get a prescription, but I understand why it is. But people abuse it.
Speaking of abusing, so on the PsychJobWiki website, there was an anonymous person who posted, like, do you think it's okay if I take some of these anti-anxiety medications before I go on my job interview? Like, others were, like, going back and forth about whether they thought that that's, like, some a natural advantage because like part of being on a job interview is that you're like really stressed out because it's a super stressful environment. What do you think about that?
I think it equals the playing field a little bit. Like, I mean, I think it's questionable. I don't think it's just questionable. I think it might be wrong for somebody who doesn't need
It's not clinical.
ADHD medication to like take something like that in order to do generals or something. But for I mean, for an interview, just to like get your anxiety levels down to like a normal level. So I don't think it takes your anxiety away completely. I mean, from personal experience, it doesn't. Like, I take the anti-anxiety medication right before a presentation or something, and it brings me to a level where I'm not like perspiring everywhere, but it doesn't make it go away by any means.
So, adding on that, what about self-medication with alcohol? Since the college population unknowingly engages in self-medication with alcohol. What are your views on that?
Depends how much medication you need. And when you're taking how often you take this medication.
You take it right before you present, or?
Yeah, it shouldn't be like every night to go to sleep or something. But I feel like in moderation, I think it helps lessen anxiety in social situations.
You should be aware that state dependency. Don't go to your test drunk unless you're
Yeah.
studying drunk.
Yes.
Yes. So there's also that whole take a shot before your presentation kind of idea too. So self-medication with alcohol.
Are you guys doing that?
No.
Yeah, so some people do that, some people don't. Some people take anti-anxiety medicines. The alternatives are maybe you can engage in self-meditation before I try to calm yourself down.
Alcohol and anti-anxiety meds, don't they work differently? I don't know about alcohol. Alcohol's depressive,
So for our next lecture, we'll talk about when stress develops into illness, somatoform disorders, and how to stay healthy.
Do we have any questions?
What are some of the studies on animals that they've done to see the effects of stress?
I think they just submitted to various stressors, but at a chronic level. And so
Do
the
you know how
animal,
they do that?
I think it, no.
Oh, okay. I was
They kind of just
wondering.
mentioned that this guy was torturing these animals.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And just like seeing when their body systems start to break down. Like, one thing was they wouldn't gain weight even though they would eat more. So just keeping them awake or something like that. Probably through electroshock sounds.
What does it mean to age faster? That was one of the stipulations that you had put up. So what exactly is aging faster?
It affects. I feel like it means that since aging is a result of your cells breaking down, so stressors make it so that your cells are not as healthy and they just tend to break down faster. So you show the effects of aging at a higher rate.
Go ahead and give some feedback.